Hi, Misha here, and many of you asked if and when we were going to review this gun, and we were interested too. So, let's tackle the Kalashnikov USA KR-103SF. Before we begin, this rifle was purchased using donations from Patreon and, from own pocket. So much obliged to everyone who supports over there. If you'd like to help support, go over and check out the link to the Patreon page. If you can't though, hey, get it. Just liking, sharing, subscribing is really nice too. But yeah, this is not something that was sent. This is not a loaner or T&E. This is one that I simply ordered and came in. Unfortunately, of course, it's been super hot, but we will get to the range and we will shoot this. So, like most Kalashnikov USA, KSU USA guns, comes in a pretty decent, pretty standard, but decent hard case. I kind of wish they glue the foam to the top, but it always falls out like that. So here we go. Don't feed these to cats. Got a little bit of paperwork here. Cable lock and more paperwork here. And one mag. Good on them for putting it under the foam. And it's also in a foam envelope. And this kind of surprised me. It is a metal mag. Most today you see will be polymer, but hey, kind of nice. Very much a modern commercial style. Doesn't appear to be milsurp, of course. And then, of course, we have the rifle here itself. So this is chambered for 7.62 by 39. Has a 16.25-inch barrel. This is the Cold Hammer forged chrome line barrel. It does have the forged trunnion, and this is the variant with the folding buttstock. Pretty neat. And it comes with a protector over the charging handle, something you don't always see with guns in a box. And of course we have our usual chamber flag here. And let's test fit the magazine. I've actually not put a mag in this at all, so we'll see how this goes. Single-handed. Sit you down for a minute so I can get a little good angle on it. There we go. Just needs two hands sometimes. This is definitely my first reaction right out of the box. No one's even seen this yet, including me, technically. So this magazine fits well, little front to back play, no side to side to speak of. It fits, yeah, as well as it should. Features: we have a 24mm threaded barrel with muzzle brake. We have bayonet lug. We do have the accessory lug. It does come with the cleaning rod under the barrel. Polymer handguards. Standard pistol grip. It does have the reinforcing plate. It does have the smooth, heavier top cover. And has a Russian style stock with storage compartment for a cleaning kit, and even has the sling slot or the strap for the grenade pad in the stock there. Flipping it over, note that it does have the XY stamped receiver, and it does have the modern style of scope rail, and of course the standard latch and the cutout for the rail. And the lockup on the stock is quite tight. The button is also quite tight, but once you unlatch it, it folds just fine. Over to the side, and then press to release. Folds out just fine. Standard rear sight, adjustable front sight. This is a pretty standard AK type gun. So why was I really interested in it? I have one or two AKs already. So why this one? Well, a few reasons. First off, we've had very good luck in the past out of Kalashnikov USA's guns. Take a look. First shots out of the KR-9. This is SIG 124 grain. KS-12, first shots with Magnum. While the KS-12 shotgun performed quite well, I didn't need to keep it because I have a Sega 12 import. On the other hand, the reason I kept the KR-9, one I bring out and mention quite frequently, we've never had a Sega 9 semi-auto, which is the civilian version of the Vityaz submachine gun, come in. So without a Russian import, this proved to be darn close, including the 30-round mag and the skeletonized stock with the 5.5mm pin. Even has the modern style large pistol grip you find on some of the shotguns and submachine guns. It just has a 16-inch barrel instead of about a 13 on the Sega 9 or about 10 on the Vityaz machine gun. But yeah, I kept this, and I'm very happy I've done so over the last several years, because it is an example, as close as you can really get, to the Russian gun, because, as I'm sure you know, Izhmash became Kalashnikov concern, and then in June of 2014, they were sanctioned. The business was sanctioned, not the guns themselves, but the business. So no more guns could come in, and American companies were not allowed to even do business, have a partnership with Kalashnikov concern in Russia. Ultimately, that's what led us to have Kalashnikov USA, and it took them several years to get off the ground, to the point a lot of us thought they were kind of vaporware. But no, they introduced the KP9 pistol and the KR9 carbine, and then that KS-12 shotgun in both standard and tactical versions, and so they were doing well. Next, though, they decided to tackle a true rifle, locked breech, 7.62x39. Plenty of Segas for this caliber, this chambering, came in, but most were hunting style or sporting style. In fact, we had one a couple of years ago that came from Henry at 9-hole, and it was a good shooter, but it just didn't have that kind of factory feel to it. Sega 7.62x39. Let's get a trigger on it. Feel that break. Another member in the Sega family we've been able to try out in the past was the one chambered for 7.62 NATO 308, although they came in as a hunting configuration and were pretty much just a civilian hunting gun. They were never really marketed for military use, although one could suspect that they'd make a pretty good DMR. In fact, the very first Sega I ever bought 20 some odd years ago was a 308. And they are shockingly soft shooting, although that cartridge using this type of break is also shockingly breezy, shall we say. Sega 308. That's such a long time. Hunter types came in with the fire control group, moved all the way to the rear of the receiver, because they had the hunting style stock, and usually they had the hunting style handguard, no bayonet lug. Many did not have a threaded muzzle, and even though when they were imported they did have a double stack magwell, the feed ramp was missing inside. to the point that they were not supposed to use standard mags. But like that one there, you can convert. Now, in 2008, at the end of the year, Arsenal introduced the SGL-20, soon followed by the slightly improved SGL-21. Good guns, and they were 7.62 by 39, and they had most military features, except they had a fixed stock. Well, the thing is, the real AK-103, while in Ishmash's catalog could be offered with a fixed stock, almost all of them actually ordered had this here folder. Arsenal did sell folding versions, while the majority they built were the fixed stock. They had the folders. Of those, the majority of those, the SGL-31 94s and later 95s under the FIME name, were in this caliber, 5.45 by 39. And they did have the factory type folding stock. With the correct 5.5 millimeter hinge pin and all that. So these were imports. So we could get the 5.45 versions. And technically they did also offer an SGL-21 94. So like this, but it was a very, very limited run. And a lot of people, myself included, simply did not pick one up because they were rarer and harder to find. Meaning that there's been quite an interest in an AK-103 style. And that's where the KUSA comes in. Much like with the KR-9, Sega 9, this gives us something that we just never really had imported, at least in any numbers, to get excited about, if that makes sense. SGL-31. Gun never gets old.
It's almost like you shot that one before.
Yep. So, how does this stack up feature-wise? It's often been speculated that KUSA ended up with the TDP. And as we've talked about before, they sure do a close clone. There's only a few minor differences. The angle on the back of the charging handle is a little bit different with the US version. I also note that it has a safety that kind of sticks out a bit more. This one's a little more inlet. But the receiver they did a really good job with. It has the bulge around the trigger. And this actually does have the reinforcing plate, whereas the imports did not. Both have the correct style of gas block. Now these are pinned on, not dimple pressed. It even has the correct front sight base with the long collar thread here. The muzzle brake is a little off. The originals used essentially the same type of brake as the AK-74M, but it had a larger hole and it was marked 7.62 just to make sure they didn't get mixed up. It's close, but if I run across a Russian, that might need replacing. On the other hand, they even went to the trouble of actually copying the right style of cleaning rod with the little step down here. So that's pretty good, frankly. Flipping these over, you'll notice they both have the same style of scope rail, the more modern pattern. And there are even a few ways where perhaps the KUSA is more authentic. Notice the imported Sega SGL does not have the XY stamp here, or the Y stamp. This does. And as I already mentioned, this has the reinforcing plate, and these did not, although some people will install them. Another thing to point out, this is an original Russian stock, but it has a small cutout you can view right there. There was actually for the civilian, there was a little restrictor. Over in Russia, if you buy a semi-automatic, they can't fire unless the stock is deployed because of their laws. So that's part of the system. Of course, the US gun does not have that because it never needed the restrictor. So in some ways, even this stock is a little bit more authentic. Again, both have storage compartments. The finish on the Russian gun's a little bit glossier. The finish on the KUSA is a little bit kind of more of a matte style, but that's okay. And the handguards have a slightly different shape to them. Little things like that. But, yeah, as far as copying, they even went to the trouble of having the piston head on the carrier without the rings. And the bolt does not have a firing pin spring. Take a look. Here's our bolt group. Notice, like I said, no fluting there. Here's our bolt. Doesn't have the AKM style lightning cuts. And it does have the free floated firing pin. It also has a very big trip on the side. Almost seems comically large, but either way, seems to be a military spec bolt group. Although I will note there's no flex in this piston, and with most all of your imports there's a little wiggle there just for tolerance purposes. So oh well, something I always kind of pick up on. Standard spring, standard cover. Looking inside, we see no surprises. It does have the bump rivet, which protrudes in here to help rotation of the bolt. Has a standard feedway, standard safety internals. It is very standard. Again, the only thing that really jumps out at me is this safety. Seems a little wide, but it could just be me. What do you think? But very minor details. With that said, it doesn't really matter how well they did copying it if it doesn't work. You know, last year we had some troubles with another purported AK-100 series copy. That one from Palmetto State Armory. Start off with the PMag that it came with.
Oh, nope. You got a spent casing in there.
Yep. I thought something felt a little off.
Yep. There's still a live round in the mag. Okay. A little more left there. Oh, interesting.
It's empty. I think the live might have come out. Let's check and see.
It is. It's clear.
Yep. Clear.
All right.
That first attempt on the 545 PSA 74 didn't go well. But a couple of months later, it came back after being repaired. And yeah, the results were quite a bit better. Let's give the PSA another go. Alright, we're at 120 now. Even after it started running quite well, it was never much of a keeper for me because it just was not a faithful AK-74M, AK Century Series gun. The devil's in the details, as I pointed out before, and they got the broad strokes right, but a lot of the other parts just appeared to be AKM or original AK-74. Nitpicking, I know, but with me already owning an SGL 3194, it just didn't seem, yeah. So, you know, personal choice. Putting this back together, I will say the dust cover fits very tight. Not super tight that I need to use a hammer. I can do it by hand, but it's tight. And the gas tube is also quite tight. The lever, you can probably move it by hand if you really try, but it's not flopping around. And the muzzle brake times perfectly. There's no wiggle wobble in that, but part of that's thanks to the long collar. That long collar is one of the things that the Palmetto was missing. One other thing too here, you know, this mag is fine, but it looks a little out of place. Let's put something a little more appropriate in it. There we go. A modern slab side polymer. Now this is not a Russian-made mag. This is actually from Poland, made later on in production. And when I got that Sega converted gun from Henry, a few of these came with it. I think they're neat, and they very closely resemble the AK-103 mag to give the all-polymer look. Now, I don't have a sling on this yet. Those who follow the channel know kind of the rule, or at least the general rule, that when it's a keeper gun of mine, it gets a sling on. And I can't do that until we actually test fire it, because it doesn't really matter how nice it looks. The proof's in the pudding of how it performs at the range. That said, what is the original AK-103? Why do people want these? Sega again. Between 1991 and 1994, Izhmash, formerly known as Izhsk, introduced the AK Century series, the AK-100 series. Now, the beginning was the AK-74M, the modernized version. This was to replace the original AK-74 and AKS-74, as well as some of the AKSU-74s. And for the first time, it standardized a folding stock, introducing the solid body folder. It standardized a scope rail. It went to the long collar to kind of remove slop in the muzzle device to help improve accuracy. And they also made some modifications and updates to manufacturing to just make it more efficient and expedient while not sacrificing on durability and reliability. In fact, in some areas, these are heavier gauge steel, like the top cover, than before. Well, this AK-74M was a 16-inch barrel gun in 5.45 by 39. The AK-101 was almost exactly the same gun, 16-inch barrel, but in 5.56 NATO. This was for export. And to go along with it, they introduced a 12.5-inch barrel carbine, again in 5.56, and this was again for export. But the AK-103, this was a 16-inch barrel version in the original 7.62 by 39 chambering, because it was felt that in Russia, some units, police, military, might still need or prefer this caliber. And 5.45 was never as successful on the world market as 7.62 by 39, so they knew right away other nations were much more likely to buy this. So it carried over the same features, the folding stock with the updated hinge, the scope rail, and they even went to modern mags with it, although of course it'll work with pretty much any AK-47 AKM magazine. And they introduced a carbine version, the AK-104, again with the 12.5-inch barrel. And finally, the AK-105 was a 5.45 version with the 12.5-inch barrel. So that was the AK series. Now the AK-107 and AK-108, while still technically in the same series, they were different. They had the balancing bolt system. We don't really need to talk about those today. So was the AK-103 successful? Yes. To date, it's been estimated that 200 to 250,000 have been built either in Russia or abroad. Now again, the AK-74M is the standard, but even within Russia, there were some special forces units that needed or preferred the larger caliber. There were also quite a number of police units that wanted to continue using it, and it was popular with civilian private security firms within Russia too. The cartridge and the fact that it used standard mags, it just made it a popular choice. But it had quite a bit of success abroad in small batches. For example, Iran bought some for its special forces. Vietnam bought a small number before selecting the Galil Ace. And Saudi Arabia bought a few for its airborne units. India, the Indian Navy, purchased a few. The Indian Army ended up with a few as well. And you saw a few in South America, like Panama would pick up a few. Little small pickups like that, probably not more than a few hundred or a couple of thousand. Now, Ethiopia toyed with the idea of not only buying some, but also producing the AK-103 under license. However, the deal fell through, and instead they selected the Beryl 7.62 from FB Radom, Poland. One deal that did not fall through was with Venezuela. Today, the AK-103 is the Venezuelan Army's standard issue rifle, and they purchased production rights and set up a factory, KVM, which opened in 2012, but there was quite a bit of difficulty, especially with dealing with Kalashnikov concern over in Russia. So it took them several years to really ramp up production. That said, the Venezuelan army started rearming as early as 2013. So there's that. Armenia also purportedly has production rights, as does Saudi Arabia, although I don't know if they've used them. Again, they're just little pickups here and there, but Venezuela is being the big one. So much more successful than, say, the AK-101, the 5.56 version and variant. And so over the years, coming up in pictures and what have you, it's become a pretty famous derivative. And it's essentially just a modernized AKM in AK-74 clothing. So that's what we have here. The original Kalashnikov concern, AK-103, has specifications. It's about 37 inches long. It's a little bit longer than an AKM because of the muzzle brake with the stock deployed. When you fold it up, you get down to a little over 27 inches though. And weight with a polymer mag and empty is around 7.5 pounds depending on the exact configuration. It can mount a standard bayonet, and for the accessory lug, it can mount the GL25 or GL30 single shot underbarrel grenade launcher for the military version, of course. And it'll take standard scope types, including like a Cobra. And I would presume the KUSA gun would have very close specs. It's almost as if they had the original blueprints. Judging it based on the features and details of manufacturing, this KUSA gun is definitely a close clone copy of the SGL 2194, itself the semi-automatic version of the AK-103. So right there, I'm already predisposed to like it, not gonna lie. But will it hold up as well as the KR-109 has? Or will it kind of fall apart at the range? After all, the Palmetto State looked quite good on the table during the preview. But, yeah. And that wouldn't be the first gun. Lots of Century guns look good. So with that, how did it do at the range? That question and more will be answered next time in part 2. That's right. This is a good old-fashioned to be continued. Had some time before we went out. I do have a rain session planned, although it's threatening rain. So we'll see if it happens. Yeah, it hasn't rained in 2 months, and the day we want to go shooting, when it's dropped below 100 degrees finally, it rains. But I figured for what these cost, again, had to pay for this. This is not a loaner gun, a gimme gun. Make a couple of videos out of it, why not? But yeah, so far I'm very impressed. These do have the newer style triggers that are actually quite very nice for what they are. Quite smooth. These, when I bought it, they came with the rack one or something, but I put a Vepr trigger in. But I do like the trigger. It's got a bit of a curve to it. The bolt throw, you can tell it's a new gun, but it's actually quite smooth, and I'm interested to see how it smooths out after some cycling. So yeah, in part 2, we'll see how it does, and we'll see if it's worthy of getting a Russian sling put on it, meaning, am I going to keep it or not? So in part 2, we'll talk about our results, and I'll kind of give my decision if it's worth keeping. After all, it's going to have some stiff competition. We've had the WBP Jack come out recently, and that's a darn good gun, and plenty of other good imports, and even the domestic guns are getting better by the day. So is the KUSA here a success? Well, I guess we'll find out together. I'll get that video out as soon as I can. In the meantime, as always, if you could, please do like, share, and subscribe. If you own one of these, I'd love to hear of your experiences in the comment, good or bad, below. And if you'd like to help support the channel, please check out the link to the Patreon page. And next time we'll find out, can this knock the jack off the top spot at the range? I'm actually just as curious as you are. This is Misha, and catch you very soon next time.